Hello and welcome to Nerdette's Newsstand, and as we count down to Halloween, I want to talk a little bit about villains, and specifically, we are going to talk about the sympathetic villain. Villains are a hard trope to write and sometimes even understand, but the sympathetic villain takes us to a whole new level of storytelling. I think sympathy and even at some points relatability in a villain is a way to make a stronger standpoint in your villainry. Now, I also will go over when it is not used and when it's not actually needed, but most of those times we look at pure evil, good versus bad binaries. We know that those villains are sometimes easily forgettable. So basically a sympathetic villain, in my opinion, is a story asking us to sympathize or even relate to a character that we know is clearly wrong. We know that has no ambiguities. Not everything in storytelling is binary. There should be nuance. It relates us to our characters a lot better. We also have a few tropes when it comes to villainry or sympathetic villainry. Basically, one of them is the lesser evil. And that is something like a anti-hero going against a mega corporation or going against a fascist in the way of magistrate or something like that. We have somebody like Harley Quinn right now in the comics going against the magistrate, Hugo Strange specifically, and Keepsake, all of which are pure evil, but Harley Quinn's still a little evil herself, so she is the lesser evil. One common trope that I actually think is probably the best for a sympathetic villain is the victim. And again, I'm going to use examples with all of these, but I may use Harley Quinn a couple times. She is the victim of Stockholm Syndrome and battered women. And it is something that some of us can not only relate to, but sympathize with. Even if you cannot relate to that situation, then it is likely that you can sympathize with a woman being stuck in a situation that she sometimes loves and sometimes is crazy in love and sometimes hates. So that is one that we all can really sympathize with. There are a lot of other ways you can look at it, right? We understand pain. We understand injustice. We understand prejudice or the struggles of a woman. Or another great example is in Black Panther, Killmonger. We understand the prejudice and racism that he received and the loss of his parent, basically making him this philosophical radical. We know why he's doing what he's doing, but we don't agree with the doing. We also can sympathize or relate to class warfare or going outside and realizing that we live in an inhumane or immortal world. This is pretty common with the abuse cycle. So going back to Harley Quinn, right? She was a victim of abuse and therefore goes about her villainry in an abusive way. The abused becomes the abuser. It's a trope used quite often, but actually I enjoy it. So another type of trope that's used a lot is kind of similar to the anti-hero, but more like an anti-villain, right? It is a villain with heroic tendencies. And I think it's a pretty good trope, but it's definitely not my favorite. And I love anti-heroes, right? But anti-villains are a little bit different on that. So we can still empathize or understand with them or participate in understanding, even if we don't agree. There's also the beautiful sounding idea is, I guess, the way to put it. And that's sort of something similar to Thanos, right? The world's overpopulated. We understand why he wants to do it. It's a beautiful sounding idea to make world utopia, to make a world free of crime. But you can't do those things. You just can't do those things, right? And there's also an ideological challenge, which I love in Poison Ivy, right? She's an environmentalist, but she goes to the whole ego-terrorist mode. So yeah, the ideological challenge is there, but It's the, again, going about it the wrong way. I think a lot of it has to do with, in the 50s, we'd see pretty much just pure evil villains, but morality is hard and it's ever shifting and it's ever evolving. And right now it's a little different. We have different things to worry about than just World War II or just the USSR at that point, right? We have different things to worry about and different evils in the world. So that's pretty much what we look at. We look at the evils in our world and create them in our entertainment. Now, we also have the kind of man versus society trope, right? And again, I'm going to use the Joker, but we learn that side of the Joker that really, in the comics, there's there's a little bit of an origin, but nothing like cemented, right? The best you've got is the Killing Joke, which is not really an origin, but Joker's origin has always been askewed. It makes him more mysterious. Well, we kind of got one with the Joker movie. And we saw this mentally ill man versus society. And we actually saw the media go after it a lot because they love taking those mentally ill people and selling newspapers with it. They love stuff like that. And it sounds a little crass and a little cynical, but I'm not wrong. A lot of those times they exploit those weaknesses within society, and to put one up on the screen bugged them. And it's really weird to me. It's really weird to me because there was a lot more violent movies that came out this year. So I want to talk specifics. I want to talk about the romantic side, the romantic villainry, right? Mr. Freeze is a perfect example of a character that we can not only sympathize with, but truly learn to understand. Same with Icicle, but they're very similar story because I'm kind of going to use them interchangeably here. Mr. Freeze is an amazing character. Nora is an amazing idea. That's the beautiful idea of bringing her back to life, right? I mentioned the beautiful sounding idea earlier. And that's what Nora is. She's that idea that you could bring her back free of cancer, free of any ailments, and have that love blossom all over again. I absolutely think Mr. Freeze is underutilized. He has such a tragic story. Oh, I absolutely love Mr. Freeze. So, again, I've mentioned Harley Quinn quite a few times. I'm kind of skipped that one. But if you've ever seen Swamp Thing, now the comic origins are a little bit different, but I'm going to mention one. Floronic Man in the actual show, as compared to any of the graphic novels, Alan Moore, or the more recent stuff by Scott Snyder, Brian K. Vaughan, Floronic Man in the show is trying to get this bioregenerative solution done because his wife is suffering from Alzheimer's. So again, we're going back to that romantic trope or that beautiful sounding idea. But in the comics, I can kind of get it too. Like, the dude made a whole weed empire. How can you not respect that? Okay, all right. I'm not going to go too far. So in Suicide Squad, now I'm going to keep it to the movies because it's a little bit different than the comics, right? In the original movie, which I don't hate, I know, unpopular opinion, it's cheesy, but it's fun. And I love me some Harley Quinn. So El Diablo is a character that, unfortunately, I wish they would use more of, even in the comics. Basically, what we see is him unable to control the meta within him, that meta power. And he accidentally kills his family. And it's a terrible tragedy. And you understand why he went crazy. You understand what happened to him. And it's terrible and it's amazing storytelling all at the same time. Flipping it over to MCU. Magneto in the, I believe, Bryan Singer films was fantastic. He is a good evil. You understand everything. Not only his base story, his origin, going through concentration camps, having this power and seeing his mother killed right in front of his eyes. But you understand when he actually tries to get older and disappears and makes a life. And then again, having his wife and child killed. It is probably the most relatable in the MCU, if that's considered the MCU. I absolutely love Magneto in those shows. That's the best part of it. He does a fantastic job. And you understand why he's doing what he's doing, even if it is not the right thing. Now, I mentioned Killmonger. I think Novask from Blade 2 would also be a good one. Baron Zemo, again, the lost family trope. Poison Ivy, the eco-terrorist who wants to do right by the world that we live in so it can live on. But unfortunately, killing people is probably not the way to go about it. There are so many different characters, right? Two-Face, Harvey Dent is another one. Azrael, he was brainwashed from the word go by the Order of Saint Dumas. He took that brainwashing and did what he could, tried to break it, tried to become the Bat and got a little bit too crazy and then was sent off into space and now he's back. But even so, you understand that wasn't his fault necessarily, right? Because he was brainwashed. So how do you feel about that? It's a very complicated and definitely subjective answer to that. Man-Bat, another romance story. I absolutely love it. Tommy from Sweet Tooth. Now, if I'm not going to talk about the Netflix show because it is quite a bit different, but in the graphic novel, we actually see Tommy deliver Sweet Tooth because he wants to get his pregnant wife's remains. Well, you go on and you realize that she actually had the baby, but he thinks it's his pregnant wife. He wants to bury her. He wants to give closure to this lady. But you're like, why did you do this? You just gave up this child, Sweet Tooth, right, Gus? But you understand. He does end up, and it's a little different, completely different trope, but I love it, where the villain, the guy you think is going to be bad, actually becomes the hero at the end of the day. There are evil for the sake of evil, and those are great characters too. Some of these villains we love that are just evil, we don't love them because they're sympathetic. We love them in spite of it. We like sometimes that they unlock a little bit of the evil in us, but they are so much more forgettable. Like, I don't know anybody out there besides, probably nobody, that favorite villain is Doomsday or Steppenwolf or even Black Mask or even Penguin. Maybe, probably not. There's evil for the sake of being evil. Same with Roz most of the time. And Scarecrow most of the time. They're so much more forgettable, in my opinion. Now, I know that some people love that binary, and I get that. I do. But I like being able to understand characters' depth, right? I don't know anybody out there that's like, you know what? Victor Zsasz, he's the shit. Okay, I like Victor Zsasz, but I like because it brings the detective side out in Batman. So that's a little bit different away. And even Joker in the comics, I know we talked about him earlier, but in the comics, he's actually just evil for the sake of being evil. And a lot of people do love him. And I think that has more to do with him being the arch nemesis of Batman with that, hero villain dynamic, which we could talk about one day. I love hero villain dynamics. Yeah, there's a lot. But at the end of the day, the best type of villains are sympathetic and relatable. You can understand their reasonings. You can understand even if they are clearly wrong. You can go, dude, I get it, but there's always that but in there. I could make a joke. You know what? I'm just gonna not. Let me know what you guys think. Do you prefer a sympathetic villain like me? Or do you prefer straight up binaries? You want your evil motherfucker to come in with no rhyme and reason, and you want them to just wipe out Metropolis and Gotham and everything, and you don't have a reason why. And I love that too. So let me know in the comments below. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.